What's up guys, welcome back. We are in the lab. Before we get going in the video, how to deload to build more muscle, please make sure you like and you subscribe to the channel. A lot of you guys are still not subscribed, so show some love, support the channel, and I can do more content for you guys. Without further ado, how to deload, and I will go over 10 signs that you may potentially need to deload. Now, the whole purpose of a deload is to drop the fatigue that has been accumulated throughout a training block. How often should you deload? Well, it depends. The harder you train, more advanced you are, more often you will likely need them. If you need to deload too frequently, you may be actually training with too much volume, so you may need to pull back. Now, how long should you go with a training block? Generally, if someone trains extremely hard and they are pretty strong, between 5 to 7 weeks, in my opinion, is the time frame at which you will need to deload. And again, this will vary person to person depending on your recovery capabilities, your lifestyle and your circumstances. Whether you're natural assisted, I don't feel like it makes too much of a difference in my opinion. What generally does make a difference is someone's training age, training intensity, their ability to recover, how they manage the day-to-day with recovery, nutrition, and also sleep management and stress. There's a lot that actually goes into it, but you don't need to overthink it too much. One thing you have to understand is this: you can only train at all-out intensity for so long. Over time, you will need to pull back and reset to drop the fatigue that has been accumulated. So I'll give you an example, right? When you go into a nice relaxing bath, there's only so much water you can fill your bath with. When it gets to a certain point, it starts to spill. Then what do you have to do? You have to empty the water. The same principle applies when it comes to your training blocks and the buildup of fatigue that happens over time. How do we deload? This will vary greatly between people's preferences. Sometimes, and in my preference, I just like to take time away from the gym. And this could be 3 to 4, even 5 days rest, completely away from the gym. Now, other way you can actually deload is simply reducing your training volume and intensity for that given week. The duration of your deload is largely going to be dictated by how tired you actually are. If you deload correctly and you deload on time, it should take you around 5 to 6 days to effectively drop the fatigue and put yourself back into a position where you are ready to return back to your training at full capacity. If you do not call it early enough and you completely wreck yourself, you may actually need a full week or even up to a week and a half to fully get back to an optimal position when it comes to your energy levels and training performance. Fatigue will inevitably impact your training performance over time. And I will go over 10 signs that break things down for you, whether you may actually need a deload or not. One sign that I have found works incredibly well as well is most of the time when fatigue gets high, you lose a lot of your grip strength. So one way to test it out is actually grip. This is a bonus point. This is actually not part of my 10 actual points that cover the signs that you may actually need to deload. Now, point number 1, your desire to train and motivation alongside of your training performance will start to take a dip. Your goal over a training block is to progressively continue pushing your numbers and beating your logbook in the gym. If you're not tracking your numbers, it's completely fine, but you should still see meaningful progression. If you are not seeing progression, potentially you may actually need to pull back and deload. If you find yourself, you're not getting quite as fired up, your motivation dips, and you start to use too much caffeine and you have to almost force yourself to get to the gym, you may need a deload. So that's point number 1. Point number 2, resting heart rate elevation. That is a huge point that I start to see in a lot of athletes that do track these metrics, including myself. Generally, I will see an increase of around 3 to 6 points when it comes to resting heart rate. In an off season, my resting heart rate sits between 55 to 60. 60 when I get to like 280s, 55 when I'm a little bit lighter. And generally when I see signs of overreaching, my resting heart rate would then increase up to even 65, which then has an impact on numerous things, and it puts you in fight or flight mode. So the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system both play a huge role, and generally when your resting heart rate is elevated, you are in flight or flight mode, which is not going to lend itself to optimal recovery. Point number 3, if you are tracking your blood sugars may be elevated, and alongside of that, you may notice more inflammation and more water retention. So, for example, in a prep, when you get tired and you notice a noticeable increase in body weight due to lack of sleep or just simple fatigue, again, you will likely notice a spike in your blood sugars as well. That is a byproduct of fatigue, high inflammation, and higher water, which is, again, a sign of you needing to pull back. Point number 4, poor appetite. And that is something that's extremely common, especially in an off-season setting. Generally, you should always have a good appetite. I mean, peak off-season, you're not going to be starving, but food should still be going down pretty easy. What I always notice, alongside of all the other metrics that I mentioned, is your appetite actually taking a big hit, which is something that you definitely need to pay attention to, because ultimately, you can only eat what you can digest, right? And that brings me to the next point, your digestion will also take a hit. More frequent trips to the toilet, bloating, and generally just feeling a little bit more uncomfortable. When you do get fatigued, again, you're not going to put yourself in a position where you are digesting that food that well, because again, your body is more in fight or flight mode, which is not going to be the most optimal place to have great digestibility. Next point, your immune system will take a hit. You might find yourself picking up a cold or even getting sick towards end of deload. Back in the day when, especially 2014, 15 and 16, where I did not understand fatigue management, I would literally train myself until I got sick physically. And it would generally be around 6 to 8 weeks, I would generally get stung with a bit of a digestive issue. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you can imagine what that entailed. And generally, I would need to take 4 to 5 days away from the gym because I had digestive issues, and that would see me straight for another block of 6 to 8 weeks, and that would be a reoccurring occurrence. Now, another point you may actually notice is joint pain and feeling a little bit more fragile. So generally, if you have any niggles or you do suffer with tendonitis as such in certain areas, it might actually flare up. Personally, I always find my joints a little bit more clicky when I do get tired, and generally a few days rest and I am back to full speed. Now, next point, and that is something that your partner may actually not be quite happy with, is mood, irritation, and libido takes a massive hit when you are tired. I see that with a lot of clients, especially bigger guys, when they do get tired and they do reach a point where they are overreaching, the libido is completely shot. And that's something that may be a sign of you simply needing a break and a rest if you are finding yourself working to the ground. And that's probably something a lot of you watching this will probably find, especially in periods of your life where you was a lot busier with work and a lot more stressed. Your libido probably took a hit, and that's just because you was tired and you needed a mental and a physical break. Next 2 points that do definitely work hand in hand. Firstly, you are going to feel a big lack of pump. Not only will feel more watery, like I mentioned previously, but you will lose performance, but you will also feel like you are flat everywhere, especially muscle, not just in the gym, but outside of the gym. You will feel a little bit deflated, and your muscle will also feel a bit softer. And next point, and the final one, is the most important one and most common one amongst my clients and myself. Restless sleep and inability to sleep when you are tired. That is a huge indicator of you needing to pull back and deload. You may still feel good in the gym, your appetite may still be decent, and so may your energy levels. But if your sleep starts to take a hit, that is just a ticking time bomb that will then impact your progress both in a fat loss phase and in your off-season push-up. Knowing all these points, you will now be able to determine whether you do need a deload or not. Ultimately, it will be your preference whether you take full days off or simply reduce your training volume. If you do opt to reduce your training volume, I like a mixture of both. A couple of days rest, and then 3 to 4 sessions with a 50% reduction in training volume. Still sets with effort, but no hyping yourself and no reps past failure or forced reps. How do I personally deload currently? And this coming week will be my deload, and I will be taking 3 days completely away from the gym, and that will be followed by 2 sessions with a 40 to 50% reduction in training volume alongside of a slight reduction in intensity. Bonus point, if you are in contest prep and you are looking to deload, you should not try to lose body fat at the same time. Losing body fat in itself is going to create some fatigue. If you are tired and you need to pull back and deload in a contest prep, now is your time to take a break from fat loss, diet break, have refeed days, because that is the most effective way to actually bring yourself around and drop the fatigue that you need to drop in order to continue stepping forward. So 1 step back, 2 steps forward. If you are in an off-season setting, you simply don't need to overthink it. You just need to rest and get yourself back up to a great spot as soon as possible so that you can have productive sessions. Guys, if you have any questions deloading or anything that you may be confused with or anything I can help further with, please comment below and ask your questions. Hope this helped, guys, and much more is yet to come. Take care for now. And as always, like, share, and subscribe. See you again soon.